Hello and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Las Vegas. We're here. It's the top 8. We're in the quarterfinals. Dusty Ochoa, Pro Tour finalist, on the right-hand side, sitting at 13-1-1 when he came into top 8. Is playing against Jeff Sayos, and we're underway. Gavin, let's take a look at what we got here.
Right, so Dusty Ochoa, as we saw in the draft, drafted kind of a green-red deck, kind of mid-rangey with a lot of removal spells.
Okay.
You know, tons of removal, Torn of Stone, Glacial Ray, a Molten Disaster at the top end. And he also is splashing blue from a Loku the Clouded Mirror, one of the best bombs you can have in this format.
That's right. Now we see he leads off with Dirkwood Bailoff here. It's going to be suspended on turn 1, the earliest possible turn you can do that.
And that's going to be a pretty huge threat, about 5 turns. And Dusty can use his removal to kind of shore up the game until then. Note that Jeff cycled a Street Wraith here, so...
Potential sign of mana problems, maybe something along those lines. It's hard to say. But he does find a second swamp to cast a Wrathy Trapper.
Jeff's deck, on the other hand, is more of a blue-black control-ish deck. It's got some strong cards for sure. It's got Kirigiri Glass Spinner. It's got Aaron Ephemeron. It's got even a Death Cloud you can kind of wipe the board with. So if Dusty's relying on a couple big fatties to end the game and the game goes long, Jeff could potentially just Death Cloud away some of Dusty's threats.
We saw Dusty open that Death Cloud. All right, so Dusty's just going to play a Terramorphic Expanse and chip. He has a Glacial Ray to take down that Trapper if he feels that he needs to do that.
The way there's a Fairy Macabre for Jeff Sayos.
Yeah.
The way I would predict this match is kind of go down to as far as the roles go is Dusty's going to be trying to get into the mid game and start attacking with guys, and it's going to fall on Jeff a lot to see if he has ways to deal with Dusty's creatures. If Dusty's creatures are not contained, Jeff is going to fall really fast. But Jeff might have a really good long game if he can, assemble cards like Death Cloud. If he can assemble, some of his strong endgame cards. He's got, 2 Stinkweed Imps he can block with the Tysis. He's got, some good options. But can he get that far? Can he survive the mid game? He has to draw them. We'll see if we'll see if he does.
Stinkweed Imps versus these huge green fatties is quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Dusty it is. Kadama's Reach.
And Dusty has 3 of them, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, he's playing all 3 of the Kadama's Reaches he drafted.
Wow, that's a lot of mana sources for one deck.
Right, but he's
how many of the Wood Readers did he end up running?
He's playing all 3 Wood Readers.
Okay, so he's committed. He says, I'm going to go big, I'm going to draw a bunch of cards, I'm going to lock up the ground, and then I'm going to hit you with 5/5s.
Or just cast that Molten Disaster, too, which will go a long way. I mean, all the mana can build up into some huge threats for Dusty Ochoa.
Yeah.
So, looks like Dusty's hand is a Wood Readers, a Moldervine Cloak, a land, maybe a second Wood Readers, and he still has that Glacial Ray. And an Imperiosaur as well. Jeff serves in for 3 with the Wrathy Trapper and the Fairy Macabre.
And there's the first Stinkweed Imp there, and that's going to make both the Dirkwood Bailoff and the Imperiosaur look a little worse.
Right, I mean, and that's some of the controlling aspects of Jeff's deck that I was mentioning. I mean, he can sit on that Stinkweed Imp, block cards like Imperiosaur and Dirkwood Bailoff, and then dredge it back to do it all over again.
That's right. All right, so here's Imperiosaur for Dusty, and he's going to play out a Mountain and just ship the turn back, it looks like.
Now, despite the fact that Dusty has some big monsters coming out, I kind of like Jeff's position a little bit. He's got that Wrathy Trapper to deal with one of the 2 big monsters. Stinkweed Imp can potentially block the other, and he can always dredge it back and replay it.
Yeah, the Stinkweed Imp being the key thing here, because remember, Dusty has a Glacial Ray in hand, so if the Trapper was the only thing standing between him and Jeff taking 10 damage, which actually it might be in this case, he can get rid of it. It won't matter for next turn because he's still going to be able to tap something if he wants, but he'll still be able to get rid of it. Ooh, cancel that order.
And that is a huge play for Jeff here.
Wow, Kira Great Glass Spinner is going to make that impossible.
Dusty's deck has a ton of removal spells, but spending 2 removal spells to kill any one creature is a large price to pay, especially when you don't have the mana to do it, or necessarily even the removal spells. I think all Dusty has for removal right now is that Glacial Ray.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big game, especially with the Stinkweed Imp. And Dusty says, I'll go to attacks. Jeff says, trap that thing. Now, Dusty is going to play a Sentinel Wood Readers here with Kicker. He's looking for a 4th color of mana as well. He has his Etched Oracle in hand. All right, so he found his dragon.
Right. Worth noting, Dusty did end up playing that Etched Oracle. We were talking about, if he would.
We were
want to
both
play
kind
the
of
Sunburst
hoping
card.
he was going to play it, and it did make it in.
Right, yeah, after passing a couple of those, but it ended up in his deck eventually. Now, normally Dusty would love to draw a card like Molten Disaster to clear his opponent's board, but Molten Disaster does not hit flying creatures.
No.
So, not so good against Jeff's army of flyers there. Dusty needs to find another removal spell so we can start taking out, or take out the Kira, and then maybe start taking out some of the other creatures Jeff has.
Is that a Thieving Sprite?
Yep, Thieving Sprite from Jeff.
He's going to target you, so there's 2 fairies, right?
2 fairies, yep, the Fairy Macabre and the Thieving Sprite.
So Dusty has to reveal 2 fairies, and then Jeff gets to pick, reveal 2 cards, and then he gets to pick one of them to be discarded?
Yeah, so what do you think you'd reveal here if you were Dusty? I mean, you've got a lot of options.
Well, he's got a Moldervine Cloak in his hand, and I don't think he'd really care if that got discarded because he can get it back when he wanted. Wow, but he's going to go for 2 of his big card draw spells. Jeff's going to look at his board and say, well, you don't have a 4th color of mana currently. He's going to ask Dusty how many cards he's got in his hand first. The Wood Readers cost more, so you can kind of force Dusty to tap out again here. And that's what he's going to do. Attack for 4 in the air. Yeah, you got to love Jeff's position here. Dusty's deck does not seem well suited to play against Stinkweed Imp specifically, but also Wrathy Trapper can cause problems for him. And here comes the Dirkwood Bailiff on the stack. But, I mean, Moldervine Cloak looks kind of awful.
Yeah,
in this matchup.
Yeah, it's really not going to do a lot. We were talking earlier about how important synergy is in this format, and how Dusty's that kind of lacked that synergy. Just got a bunch of big guys, and we see that kind of hurting him a little bit here. A lot of the synergistic decks could maybe get some kind of synergy running, start running past Jeff's creatures, but merely just big guys on their own are not going to be enough.
Right.
And Jeff's deck seems pretty well positioned against some of the stuff Dusty's doing with 2 Stinkweed Imps, Wrathy Trapper.
And they're all locked down under the protective gaze of Kira Great Glass Spinner.
Right.
All right, he says, sure, I'll trade you. And he's just going to trade him a draw step for his 5/5.
He even has a Take Possession in his deck he could potentially draw to just steal one of those guys. Tysis to hit Dusty for 10.
Wow.
One of the 5/5s. Jeff's got a lot of options in his deck. And there's a Partic Dragon for Dusty Ochoa.
So we're going to see a dredge of the Stinkweed Imp here, or is Jeff just going to take a natural draw? He's just going to naturally draw here. He didn't feel like bringing back that Imp here. He does have Dusty all the way down to 9.
Knowing when or when not to dredge that could be a huge decision point, because a 1/2 flyer for 3 with Death Touch is certainly strong in the situation, so it's good if you want to play defense, but if you want to go on the offense, perhaps Jeff wants to draw one of his 2 Latchkey Fairies or something like that.
Yeah.
To just push those final 9 points of damage through.
To just make it so that he doesn't care what Dusty does, right? And he can just ignore his creatures. He's got that Wrathy Trapper. Again, this is just a very awkward spot for Rusty. Jeff has really perfect cards against him right now. The Fairy Macabre's just acting as an attacker, but man, Wrathy Trapper's really good. And the Stinkweed Imp that's sitting in his graveyard is going to be good if he ever decides to dredge it back. And then even if Dusty had something for one of them, Kira Great Glass Spinner protects them. Erratic Mutation. Wow.
Ooh,
That's a bold play.
All right, well.
Let's see if he gets there. He does. Just hits a 6.
Right.
Wow.
That's bold. Wow.
I'm going to have him teach me that one. Jeez. The thing's a 4/4.
Not easy to get off the board, but he does.
It is interesting, though, because if he hits like a 3 while it pumps up its power, it lowers his toughness a lot, and he can still just throw his Fairy Macabre or whatever in there and say, hey, block it.
Right. Jeff takes a risk.
Really, 1/1 is the only thing that really he's unhappy with, right?
Dusty draws a Fiery Fall there. Another expensive removal spell. Yeah, against that Kira, it's rough. The one thing Jeff does have to think about is if Dusty Ochoa has a Trump that remains, he doesn't want to lose to it on accident. Now, we know that Dusty does not have Trump.
That's right.
But with 3 colors represented, Etched Oracle, I think Jeff should be thinking that Dusty might have a Tromp in his deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's made sure to keep that Wrathy Trapper available at all times here, and he's got Dusty's board whittled down to just 6 power currently.
Right.
It would be 12 if he had Trump. Like he said, we know he doesn't.
Right. Now, with 5 power in the air, I think Jeff has pretty much got this one.
Yes.
But, you know, it's something that he's really going to have to consider playing around that Trump in future games.
All right, so Dusty's going to play Sentinel Wood Readers just to make sure, but doesn't look good. Dusty's got some interesting lines here that he can take in the future against Kira. You know, he can play his Moldervine Cloak on one to break it. It goes back to his graveyard where he can get it back. And then he can use a removal spell, so it kind of lessens the blow a little bit, but it still puts him down a card. And that's some desperate acts as we see Dusty Ochoa scoop up his cards and lose game 1 to Jeff Sios.
And Kira's a brutal card against Dusty's deck.
So nasty.
We saw Dusty gripping Glacial Ray, Fiery Fall, and he just wanted to kill off Jeff's creatures, but the Kira just did not allow him to do that in a mana-efficient manner.
It just feels like an awful matchup to me. I mean, so many of the cards that we just saw matched up so well for Jeff against Dusty's cards, and then that interaction that you just mentioned, plus something you mentioned earlier, there's the Earthquake, and it doesn't hit flyers. So there's another one of, you know, Dusty's big cards that isn't really going to be particularly effective versus Jeff.
You know, it's funny, when I walked over to Jeff's deck when he was in deck building, he had kind of a more control-ish deck laid out. It looks like he ended up maybe going with something a little more aggressive. So we have a sneak peek over here of a Justin Wynn versus Sean Collins match deep in the game. Are those the right names, Rashad? So on your left, there's a Black-White Rebels deck. The Black-White Rebels deck is piloted by Justin Wynn. He's got 4 Rebel Searchers in his deck, including 2 Wrathy Trappers, a Bound in Silence. A lot of good options there for Justin Wynn, and I like the way his deck was shaping up a lot when I walked over there. On the right-hand side of the board, I don't believe that's Sean Collins. I think that's Lance Hartbarger, and he's got his Ryusei under a Bound in Silence.
Torrent of Stone is going to hit Tide Hollow Sculler so that he can get a Kitchen Finks back to his hand. Where did that...
Yeah.
Where did it go?
Yeah, I'm curious as to where the
Did
Sculler
it go
went.
back in his hand?
It's not in the graveyard unless that Pepper Smoke is...
I mean, we're coming in the middle of a sequence here, so I don't really know what's... But it looked like... Yeah, he put it in his hand for some reason. That seems like a pretty sweet place to put it. Just died.
Went on over and talked to Justin during deck building. He seemed very nervous.
Okay, so yeah, he's explaining it now, but it looks like the judge caught it, and they've kind of... You see him slap his face. Yeah, buddy.
So the board state here, if you're just joining us for the sneak peek, is Fairy Macabre, Wrathy Trapper, Kithkin Greatheart, Killcomer Giant on Justin's side, versus Lance's Bounded in Silence Ryusei, Kitchen Finks, and the 2/4 Penumbra Spider token.
Yeah. So a properly developed board here.
Yeah. Now, worth noting, even though that Ryusei is under a Bound in Silence, Justin has to be a little concerned that Lance could potentially still blow up that Ryusei somehow and get its effect to go off.
Right.
Which would deal 5 damage to all creatures without flying.
Is it a Saltfield Recluse?
Indeed it is.
But no attacks here. Lance Hartbarger is at, it looks like 11. Justin hasn't been hit yet.
And it looks like we're about to head back.
We're going to go back,
the other
because
match.
there's no way that he was, yeah, there we go. All right. So, Tysus.
And that card is, so Jeff suspends Tysus, and that is an incredibly scary card against Dustin Ochoa.
Yeah, it's not like he can just decide not to cast his big stuff. He needs to find a way to get in for damage, and Tysus is going to tick down and potentially do 10 to Dusty when it resolves.
And the really awkward thing for Dusty is he doesn't have a ton of removal spells that could even remove his own guy if he wanted to 2-for-1 himself there. You know, because his guys are a lot 5/5s, and he's got, you know, maybe a Fiery Fall to do it, but Glacial Ray won't kill a lot of his own creatures. Torn of Stone won't kill a lot of his own creatures. So I think if you're Dusty, you might just have to hold off on playing any big guys. Maybe you could play a Wood Readers or something. But
that's got to make Jeff happy. He's got. I mean, does he just do nothing as well, or does he start developing his board? And I mean, Tysus must hit something. Does he just use it to hit one of his smallest creatures or something? If that's the case.
Yeah, I think if I'm Jeff, I'm okay developing my board because especially his deck has like Stinkweed Imps and you know, smaller guys you can target if you need to.
Yeah, because I don't think I mean, I think that if I'm Jeff, and we both just sit here, and Dusty gets to develop Dusty doesn't develop his board, but gets to develop all of his mana. When the floodgates come off, once that Tysus is done being suspended, it feels like Dusty's going to have a much better. You know, his first few plays are going to be 5/5s, and Jeff's are going to be 2/2 flyers.
Right. Where if Jeff starts to play his guys now, and Dusty wants to hold off,
yeah,
then I think Jeff can get the upper hand.
He can get the upper hand, and sure, he'll lose a little bit back, but like you said, he's got disposable creatures. Something like a Marsh Flitter would be really sweet here, too. No, it looks like Jeff is committed to not letting that Tysus hit him either.
And noteworthy in Dustin's hand is a Moloku the Clouded Mirror.
Wow, there's a reasonable recovery plan.
And he just deploys it. Is that what he's looking at? No, Petals of Insight.
He's going to see, because Dusty is just taking this time. All right, here's a logic not to hit it for 2. But, you know, Dusty says, I'm just going to use this time to develop my hand. He's just going to set up and try to get to the perfect hand so that once Tysus is gone, he can start deploying huge threats. Now, the good news is, thanks to Suspend, Jeff does get first crack at it, right? It's going to come off during his upkeep. It's going to resolve, and then Jeff gets to go creature, something along those lines. Normally, you know, there's a downside to this type of thing where your opponent gets to rebuild first after like a sweeper, in this case after something that keeps you from playing cards, but that isn't the case with this one, which is certainly worth noting. All right, so Dusty feels comfortable throwing out a Mog War Marshal because.
All right, if you Tysus it,
look,
go for it.
Go for it, man.
It's it feels almost like some kind of gentleman's battle cruiser magic, where everyone's like, all right, no rush. Turn 7, we'll start playing our threats.
It would be uncouth to do anything different. All right, let's see. If Jeff's, I'm assuming, just going to do nothing again. If he had something to do to interact with Dusty on Dusty's turn, that sure would be nice. You know, the Logic Knot was a good start there.
Although Jeff might wish later he'd saved that Logic Knot for Moloku.
Well, and now he feels comfortable running the Stinkweed Imp because once Dusty broke that dam open, in they come. Is that a Riftwing Cloudscape?
It's an Ephemeron.
It's an Ephemeron. All right. I like that.
So in just 4 short turns, what many pros called the best common in the format will come off Suspend and be able to crack at Dusty's life total.
Now, obviously, if Jeff had been able to put this Ephemeron under Suspend and have it come down a turn after Tysus, that would have been awesome.
Oh, yeah. But drew it a little late for that, it looks like.
Indeed.
So Dusty has a full grip of strong cards to deploy after this, though. He's got Fiery Fall, Torn of Stone, Moldervine Cloak, Moloku, Penumbra Spider, and Sentinel Wood Readers.
All right, so Tysus ends up getting a lowly Goblin token, which was just really a close personal friend of Mog War Marshal. Not a big hit here. And that Tysus, I'm not going to say it goes to waste. It certainly changed the way this game has played out, but that's not what you want to hit with the Tysus versus a big green fatty deck.
No. Although if Jeff's plan was to buy time, and it seems like that's what he wanted to do based on the fact that he wasn't playing a lot of things, and maybe that worked out the way Jeff wanted it to. The only question is, was that the right choice, you know? I don't know what's in Jeff's hand. He's holding it a little close to the chest, literally. So maybe he doesn't have much more to play, and the Tysus was crucial for just getting him some threats. Looks like he's got a Thieving Sprite in his hand. That's the one card I can make out.
All right, scariest Stinkweed Imp ever. It's now carrying an axe, but it's going to get eaten by a Torrent of Stone. So that's kind of an interesting play from Dusty. He's going to protect his life total here. But there's a Wrathy Trapper to follow up for Jeff.
So now if you're Dusty, what do you want to play from your hand? You want to go for the Moloku while Jeff doesn't have 2 blue untapped? So
Yes.
The Logic Knot?
That's exactly what I want to do.
That's what I think I would do. I mean, you could look at that Sentinel Wood Readers, but I think you just have to jam Moloku and start taking control.
Resolving Moloku seems like a sweet plan. It looks like he's going to go for a Moldervine Cloak here. I don't love this play, but he's clearly got a plan. The thing I don't like about it is that you've just committed another card to something that can be taken care of with the Wrathy Trapper, right? You do get a hit in here, and that's nice. It's a nice little tempo play. But, the Wrathy Trapper now is going to keep that Mog War Marshal and hence the Moldervine Cloak locked down for as long as he wants it to.
Right. And especially with that Aaron Ephemeron coming off suspend, getting in some damage now and then generating a couple of illusion tokens to get ready to deal with the Ephemeron, would be nice. But
okay, but Dusty's got a different line lined up here, and I don't have a full view on what he's got in his hand either, and that often changes the way that these games play out. So let's see what his line, where it leads him here.
Right.
He's down a game. We're in the quarterfinals here from Vegas. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Gavin Verhey, and we've got some really great Magic here this whole weekend. This set has provided some of the most exciting moments and just flat out awesome board states we've seen in a long time. Apocrycyte's going to pick up a Bone Splitter here from Jeff, and he's left up a black mana so that Wrathy Trapper can do its thing. Now that once again is going to leave an opening here for Dusty Ochoa to resolve Moloku the Clouded Mirror if he wants.
And Dusty draws Molten Disaster there, so that's one of his other bombs that he now has access to. He probably doesn't want to cast it right now, but it's certainly an option for him going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, he could, if he really wanted to, clear out both creatures for Jeff, but not a huge deal. All right, Jeff's going to block, and he's going to get that Apocrycyte under suspend as soon as possible. That's been a pretty consistent game plan that we've seen. It looks like he's going to go for a Sentinel Wood Readers here. He wants to save that Moloku. Do you think he's saving it so that he can have multiple activations in case it were to get instantly killed by, like, Hirobi's Whisper or something along those lines?
Yeah, that's actually exactly the card I was thinking of, even that he could be concerned about. Okay. That way you could play Moloku with, say, 4 lands untapped, and even if Jeff spends a removal spell on Moloku, he can still return 4 lands to his hand and make 4 1/1 flyers.
That's hard to argue with that. That makes a lot of sense. If you run out Moloku at the earliest convenience and get it killed and get like a spirit token out of it, yeah, you've won for one. But I mean, you got to consider the potential that a card like Moloku has to just completely take over the game.
Right, and with that Fiery Fall in Dusty's hand, he's got an answer for the Aaron Ephemeron, so he doesn't have to worry about chump blocking that guy with Moloku right away necessarily.
Yeah. All right, there's a Thieving Sprite. Now it's only going to be for 1. And Dusty just resolved a kicked Sentinel Wood Reader, so you got to figure he's got something he doesn't mind pitching here.
Well, it looks like Imperiosaur is the card he's going to send to the graveyard based on how he's holding it. His hand right now is Imperiosaur, Fiery Fall, Moloku, Molten Disaster. Out of those 4 cards, I think the Imperiosaur is the one to go.
Man, yeah, I guess so. He wants to hang on to Molten Disaster. He wants an instant speed spot removal spell to deal with stuff after, and also to deal with flyers like the Ephemeron that's coming in next turn. And there's no way he's going to get rid of Moloku when he's got the mana for it.
I think you could make an argument for Molten Disaster just because Jeff's deck doesn't have a lot of flying creatures in it, or doesn't have a lot of non-flying creatures in it.
That's a really good point.
But it's close either way. And the Molten Disaster also serves as a great form of reach. If Dustin does lay a Moloku down and starts attacking for a bunch of damage with all the spirit tokens, he could, even if Jeff kills the Moloku and deals with the tokens, after replaying all the lands from Moloku, he could get back up into an X-Spell territory.
Yes. All right. So Dusty's going to attack for 3 damage here. Drop Jeff down to 13, and this is kind of what you were talking about. He's already got 7. Now, it does get a little awkward because if you start picking up a bunch of lands with Moloku, well, those are lands you're not going to be able to tap for the Earthquake effect.
Right. You've got to wait till you recast all those lands, or replay all those lands, which isn't exactly a short endeavor.
No. Now, Dusty Ochoa says, all right, your Ephemeron resolves, but before your draw step, still in your upkeep, I'm going to nail that thing with a Fiery Fall. He doesn't want to give Jeff a rip at Logic Knot or something along those lines.
Right, or with 5 mana, Traumatic Visions is certainly a card that you could easily have.
That's another great example. And Dusty's playing tight here. He's not opening up that door. Not going to get greedy. All right, so Thieving Sprite has a lane to attack if it wants. Is he attacking with both?
Yeah, he's attacking with both. I think that means Jeff plans to use all of his mana this turn. Otherwise, he would have saved a swamp up for the Wrathy Trapper.
That's right. What is this? Oh, an Aether Snipe. All right, let's just put a huge tempo hit in, and he targets the Mog War Marshal, so that's going to get that Moldervine Cloak back in the yard. Dusty can get it back by dredging for 3 whenever he wishes to replace a draw step with that. But yeah, that Aether Snipe's a big game stabilizer here, as the 2 creatures that are left over just don't really have attacks.
On the bright side for Dusty, when he does recast that Mog War Marshal, he'll get a 1/1, just in case. You could block the Aether Snipe, for example. Is it time?
Finally!
Yes.
Moloku makes an appearance.
And here's
Moloku.
Here's Moloku, a foil Moloku, no less.
Yeah, very shiny. Looks really cool.
We saw Dusty open that in his pack, and he could not take it fast enough.
No, he could not. Now, he's got 5 mana left over. So, again, Dusty was taking a much longer game plan here, and it's paid off. He's able to resolve Moloku and have 5 lands available to return to his hand. He's got a couple of cards left. One of them pretty mana hungry. I don't know what the other one is.
Let's see what Jeff has to respond to that Moloku with. Oh, Erratic Mutation on Moloku. Now this is an interesting board state.
But Dusty really doesn't have a choice here but to use his Moloku first, right? Because once that thing's revealed, he doesn't get to choose in between, right?
Right. The interesting thing here is you don't know how much Erratic Mutation is shrinking Moloku by until after or while it's resolving, at which point it's too late to activate its ability.
That's right. And here comes 5 of these things. And Moloku might very well live through this. I mean, Jeff got pretty lucky last time. Let's see what happens this time.
Oh, 3.
It's a 3. And was that a Hirobi's Whisper?
It was a Hirobi's Whisper.
Wow, the full dagger. He just has to ship it down. Now, if he happens to have a Pepper Smoke in hand, he can finish the job here, even get a card back, but that's got to be disappointing.
Right. See the exact opposite of the first game, where Erratic Mutation hit the Aether Snipe that he needed to kill the Partic Dragon. Yes. This time around, not quite getting the job done against Moloku.
No. It did force Dustin to pick up half of his mana base, but so? Now he's got 5 1/1 flyers to go to work with here.
Right, and Jeff's only flying creature right now is that 1/1 Thieving Sprite with the Bone Splitter. Only 1 toughness. I mean, it can trade for a token, I guess, if he really wants to, but that's still 5 points coming in the air. And this is the point where, like I was talking about earlier, Dusty can start rebuilding his lands. And even if Jeff gets back into the game, Molten Disaster could just seal the deal. And with Split Second, it could even not allow Jeff to respond.
That's absolutely right, especially since Dustin did see Logic Knot in Game 1. He doesn't want to get Logic Knotted for 1.
Right. I mean, and there's a Logic Knot in Jeff's graveyard, but he seems like the kind of deck which might have multiple Logic Knots.
For sure. All right, so Apocryphite with haste is in. Same thing with Aether Snipe carrying a Bone Splitter. And Dusty looks like he's going to line up some blocks, some chump blocks here. He doesn't want to take 10.
So he loses an Illusion Token and a Sentinel Wood Readers to save the damage. And now that Moloku has survived, if Dustin wants, he can just keep returning lands to block those creatures. So he has to kind of weigh if he wants to build up toward Molten Disaster or if he wants to just keep blocking with illusion tokens.
It looks like Moloku's going to get tapped during the upkeep.
Yep, by Wrathy Trapper.
Okay.
Saving yourself from Sudden Shock, perhaps, which we did see one of in the draft. So you can draw Sudden Shock and kill off the Trapper.
Yep, good call.
It's easy to forget that Split Second is in this format, but it absolutely is, and you can get wrecked by it if you're not careful.
Yeah.
We've seen some pretty good Split Second plays over this weekend.
We have. We saw. Oh, here, let's see what Dusty's got. Is he going to play another Sentinel Wood Readers, or is this Molten Disaster?
So I'd guess he's Molten Disastering for 3, which will kill off the Trapper, leave his Spider intact, and also hit Jeff for 3 damage.
It's for 4, right?
Or for 4, excuse me.
Yeah, he said he's not going to pay the Split Second.
Right, he doesn't need to do that, so excuse me, for 4.
I mean, Jeff is representing Logic Knot here, potentially. Not that he for sure has it, but I mean, it's something that Dusty has to consider, but he says, nope, we're doing it for 4. He wants to kill the Aether Snipe.
And it kills, I mean, that's so good for Dusty. It kills the Aether Snipe, the Wrathy Trapper, and resuspends the Apocryphite.
Wow.
That Thieving Sprite stays in play, yeah.
Thieving Sprite stays in play. The Spider bites it, but so what? He gets another one back.
Gets a shadow image of that Spider. 2/4 black reach.
There it
token.
is. And Jeff can take 4 damage here. Another 4 damage here, I should say.
Right, from those 4 illusion tokens.
Now, Dusty did tap out for this play, so he's going to be left with just a Spider, but facing down a Thieving Sprite and sitting at 10 life. In fact, that Sprite's gone now, too. Dusty's got to feel like he's in a great position here.
And I absolutely feel like Dusty's in a great position. He's got his Moloku still on the board, 3/1 on flyers, that 2/4 Spider, and Jeff has nothing on the battlefield. Jeff looking at his graveyard, maybe he found a Death Denied or something? And those flyers doing a real number on Jeff's board. If you're Jeff here, what would you want to draw to try and dig you out of the situation? I mean, what would you want to see?
In these colors? My own Moloku?
Take Possession would be a pretty good one.
There you go. Take Possession would be a good start. He's really up against it here, though.
He's going to tap 5 mana here.
Warren Pilferer. So that explains why he was digging through his graveyard here. Let's see what he's going to take. Dusty has tons of cards in hand, so that Thieving Sprite's not going to do a ton. He's going to get his Wrathy Trapper back, though.
And, I mean, that'll hold him out a little bit. The Pilferers can block the Spider token just fine, so the Spider token probably won't attack. And the Pilferers could tap down the Moloku next turn, but Jeff is going to take 5 in the air this turn from those 3 illusions and Moloku.
It's hard to imagine that he can find something to get out, and looks like there's even a Glacial Ray just to go to the face, so just to cut off any potential draw steps here from Jeff. So Dusty Ochoa ties it up. He's not going to go down that easily. And we're here in the quarterfinals of Vegas, and we've got a Game 3 right off the bat.
Wow. So, yeah, headed into Game 3, and this is going to be a tight one for these players. Their decks seem to be pretty well matched. I mean, Jeff's got a good dose of flyers, but the beef from Dusty Ochoa is pretty strong.
Yeah, you know, you said that they're well matched. I have to note here that neither seem particularly great. You know, these aren't ideal archetypes that we're seeing here. We're seeing some powerful spells and some nice play here, but you know, we're not seeing like these amazing things. Although Moloku is pretty sweet.
Right. I mean, when I was looking through the decks earlier that were in the top 8, there are definitely some really strong, really insane decks.
Yeah.
We'll get to those in a little bit. For now, let's watch Justin Wynn and Lance Hartbarger battle. Justin has a tight little white-black Rebels deck. Lance Hartbarger playing red, green, white. Kind of similar to Dusty's deck, but with a really good top end in the form of like Rude Awakening, Ryusei, Trompe the Domains.
Wow, that's a really good top end. You weren't kidding.
Yeah. Some of the cards that that no doubt Dusty would have wished to have got, the Trompe the Domains or the Rude Awakening especially. Justin serves in with Kithkin Greatheart there, dropping Lance to 18. And there's Wrathy Trapper. And that guy can do a good job of shutting off some of Lance's bigger threats, like, you know, when that Dusk Wasp comes in, or if you know, even a Ryusei enters the battlefield.
Wrathy Trapper, it's interesting because it's really, really good against some decks, and against other decks it's actually kind of miserable. Token decks and things like that don't really care about it too much, but the green-based decks hate to see that card.
Right, or even Goblins decks, which use a lot of small guys to their advantage.
All right, 2 Thallid Shell Dwellers here for Lance Hartbarger.
Gumming up the ground a little bit, making sure
a little bit.
A lot of bit, I suppose we'll say.
That's 10 toughness in one turn he just dumped on the table. That's a lot of gum.
It's crazy to me that Thallid Shell Dweller is an 0-5 for 2 with a pretty good ability.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too.
That guy is strong. I don't think he got the respect he deserved back in Time Spiral Block, but he's making waves here at Grand Prix Vegas.
It's true. Another Wrathy Trapper. He's only got 1 Swamp. Is that a Veteran Armorer there? Yeah. So double Wrathy Trapper can get really nice if he's got 2 Swamps. Hopefully he wants this game to go along. He doesn't actually have a Rebel Searcher at the minute, something that can search up more Rebels, so it's going to kind of stunt his growth a little bit.
Although, frankly, the cards Justin wants to find the most are those trappers in the first place. I mean, he has a Bound in Silence he can search up with his Rebel Searchers, but otherwise the trappers are the primary 2 cards he would get, looking at his deck list.
And there's a Spore Sower Thallid there, another 4/4 for 4 that we can certainly see what direction this game is going from Lance's side. He's making Thallids, he's making creatures, and something like a Tromp the Domains or something like that is a great finisher. I'm pretty sure he has a Tromp in his hand, too.
Indeed he does. His hand is Sporloth Ancient, Tromp the Domains, and Sporloth Ancient will also help expedite.
All right, so we've got a plan.
Yeah. And so speaking of a plan, we're going to switch back to this other match to see what plans these guys have in store.
Yeah, this is a game 3 here. Dusty Ochoa, you see on the right-hand side, he just suspended a Dirkwood Baloth, facing down an unsuspended Apocryphite here from Jeff. And it looks like another one.
Oh,
so
wow.
Dusty's setting up the plan here. He knows what he wants to do later in the game. The question is, how is he going to fill the time from then until now when those 2 Dirkwood Baloths come in? We've seen that Jeff has had many answers to something like a 5/5 vanilla creature here. And let's see if he can keep it up.
Right, the question is, does Jeff have them? I mean, like I said earlier, the mid-game is going to be the crucial part of the game, because if Jeff can deal with those big creatures, he's going to be in pretty good shape.
Yes.
But if Dusty just keeps crashing in with those 5/5s and Jeff is forced to trade off his guys, he's going to be in a rough position. Oh, suspends Tysus, which will come off right after the Dirkwood Baloth unsuspends.
Now, I didn't see if he drew it, but I wonder if he sandbagged that a little bit. What do you think? There was already a Dirkwood Baloth on suspend, right?
Yeah, so I think he probably drew it.
Okay.
Otherwise, would have suspended it the turn prior.
So good timing.
Yeah. It's funny, I was just thinking about the Tysus on Dusty's turn, and then there we go.
Yep.
Suspend Tysus. And a Kadama's reached by Dusty Ochoa will help fix up his mana a little bit.
Accelerate him, get all the colors he wants.
Right, and there's the blue that he's looking for, although we see the Moloku is still in his deck. So hasn't drawn it yet, but as we saw last game, that deck can really turn the tides. One of the top 5 rares pros most wanted to open was Moloku the Clouded Mirror. And out of all the Molokus in the set, there's Moloku, there's Skeletal Vampire, there's Una, there's Cloud Goat Ranger. Moloku is at 5 mana, up there with many of the best cards in the set.
Absolutely. Sleeveless Dusty Ochoa here, trying to make it to the semifinals. And there's a Stinkweed up for Jeff. So through 4 turns, he's been able to mount a total of 2 power on the board.
And although he only has 2 power, though, that Stinkweed up is going to be pretty good against those Dirkwood Baloths.
Fantastic.
I mean, we're trying to figure out if Jeff has a way to deal with those, and Stinkweed up is a marvelous answer. Could block one, kill it, dredge back later to put out another blocker, and that Tysus comes off even that killed the other one. So
yep.
Jeff Stinkweed up will do a lot of work here.
He's certainly prepared. Now, the thing that he needs now is to work on the other direction. He's got Dusty down to 18, but he hasn't really got any pressure in the air or anywhere else for that matter. Now, the Tysus is going to represent potentially 10 damage here.
Right.
And so he's probably counting on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that 10 damage will quickly hurt Dusty's life total. And I don't think Dusty has a good way to deal with that. I mean, he'd have to spend 2 removal spells probably to kill off his own Baloth, and that's not a proposition that's even great. I don't think he has those removal spells right now.
I mean, his deck, the green-red deck has a pretty tough time killing 5/5s.
I think Fiery Fall is the one card he could draw that would do it.
I think so, too.
Real quick from the back tables, Madison Jonas takes down Sean Collins. So Sean falls first seed coming into the top 8, and despite the fact that he got to play in the first game, Madison takes him down.
Sweet deck.
Yeah, Sean had a really sweet deck with double Cloud Goat Ranger, Una, Revelark, double Plume Veil, but Madison's deck took it down. I won't spoil Madison's deck yet. His deck is very good, though, and I'm sure we'll get to see him later.
Yep.
But in the meantime, Dusty's going to draw his card and see if he can find an answer to his own Dirkwood Baloths, I guess. He can't really afford to take 10. Now, interesting to note is Dusty has an Echoing Truth in his sideboard. Do you think he might have brought it in here to help fight off a card like Tysus?
Oh, that's really interesting. Not an ideal answer for it. is better than dying. Probably wouldn't bring it in. Otherworldly Journey or something along those lines is the kind of answer that you'd much prefer. I don't know if he has any of those, though.
No, he does not.
It's hard to imagine him bringing in Echoing Truth, though, for that reason.
And so it looks like Dusty's hand is Sentinel Wood Readers and a Molten Disaster. Maybe one more spell, couldn't quite make it out, and then the rest are all lands. Dirkwood Ballast going to come in next turn, but if Dusty attacks, it'll probably get eaten by the Stinkweed Imp. And then the next Dirkwood Ballast may fall prey to that Tysis that's going to unsuspend.
It's a Fairy Macabre. In this set, it's just a 2/2 with flying that happens to be a fairy also. It's pretty good, though. I mean, it fills that 3-drop slot quite nicely for the fairies deck.
Yeah, I mean, Windrakes are always reasonable cards, and, you know, it's got another ability. You could maybe get a Moldervine Cloak in this matchup, theoretically, right?
There you go. All right, so one Dirkwood Baloth comes off a suspend. If it attacks, almost for sure Stinkweed Imp's going to jump in front of it, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And once again, we see Molten Disaster has this huge drawback here of not hitting flying creatures, and Jeff's deck is full of those flyers.
Yep. And hitting an Apocryphite, not very exciting.
Absolutely not. No, especially it would kill his Goblin tokens in the process. And Dusty just serves with everybody.
Wow, this is an interesting attack. Jeff can kill both tokens, eat a token, and eat the and trade with the Dirkwood Baloth.
So you think Dusty's just trying to bluff something here potentially?
Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't quite see what he had in his hand from this draw step. So let's take a look.
He's got an Imperiosaur and a Molten Disaster, but he might have something else hiding in the wings. I guess we're about to find out. And that Stinkweed Imp cannot get in front of that Baloth fast enough, it looks like.
And is the Apocryphite going to trade off too? No.
Looks like the Apocryphite will hang back just in case Dusty has something going on there.
Apocryphite can jump in front of the Baloth, I suppose, the next turn.
That makes sense. Save 5 damage and then allow Tysis to take it out without losing anything else.
Exactly.
And now Dusty's hand looks to be Sentinel Wood Readers, 2 lands, Imperiosaur, and then one more card hiding in the back there. Oh, the Mog War Marshal. And Molten Disaster, of course. If you're Dusty, what do you think you do here? Do you play the Imperiosaur and try and have 2 huge guys swinging in at next turn, or do you just go for the Sentinel Wood Reader to draw some cards?
I mean, anytime you ask me if I can draw some cards, I'll probably draw some cards, but I can certainly see playing the Imperiosaur and just trying to overwhelm Jeff's side of the board. I mean, he's not getting through anything anyway.
And Dusty does go for the Wood Readers. I like that play here, especially because Jeff could always just dredge the Stinkweed Imp next turn, and then, you know, block one of the 5/5 Stinkweed Imp, Apocryphite on the other, Tysis unsuspends. So drawing some cards, trying to find a card like Maloku could be what Dusty Ochoa's plan is here.
He does not get back the Stinkweed Imp this turn. He just takes his natural draw step here. We're in game 3 here. Dusty's tied up with Jeff. We're in the quarterfinals of the top 8 here from Grand Prix Las Vegas. 4,500 players started. Currently 6 remain, or 7.
7 remain.
7 remain.
7 remain. It's crazy to think the field has been whittled down to this few players.
It's insane.
I mean, still plenty.
There will be 4 left after this round.
All right, so Dusty just crashes in with everybody. 2 Wood Readers, a Goblin token, and Dirkwood Baloth getting right into the red zone.
And as predicted, Jeff is going to jump in front with the Apocryphite here.
So Apocryphite blocks the Baloth, the Macabre blocks the Goblin token, which will finish off that Goblin, and then the 2 Wood Readers peck through for a point of damage each.
Now, does Dusty have Molten Disaster here?
He does have it in his hand, yes.
Wow, take a look at our other match here.
Oh, that's crazy.
That is an insane amount of tokens. I don't know exactly what happened, but that was the beginning of the game we saw the beginning of. All right, here it is. Is this a Molten Disaster for $1 million? Is he going to just get rid of his own board so that he doesn't get Tysist out here?
And that looks like the plan. Never has it looked so good to 4-for-1 yourself.
Yeah, he can even do it with split second if he wants to still kill the Dirkwood Bailiff because it took 1 in damage from combat. And that's exactly what he does. And the Fairy Macabre's the only thing left standing. So Dusty Ochoa has engineered an awkward but potentially successful board state where he does not get Tysist for 10. And in fact, Jeff is going to get Tysist for 4.
Right. I mean, and Dusty has a couple cards left over here. He's got that Imperiosaur. He's got a Moldervine Cloak, a couple lands. I mean, I still don't love the fact that Dusty had to kill off all of his own permanents.
And I'm sure he doesn't like it either, but we can see why he built up his hand with those Sentinel Wood Readers. He wanted to try to get as much of it going.
And make sure he hit enough mana to Molten Disaster for 5.
So Tysus kills Fairy Macabre. As Rashad would say, this is.
Right.
That is.
And after all the crazy life totals settle, after Molten Disaster resolves and Tysus resolves, Jeff is at 8. Jeff is at 8, and Dusty is at 14.
Now that seems fine for Dusty, except for the fact that he has no pressure since his whole board is gone. He's got a grip full of cards though, and he should be able to rebuild a pretty nice amount of pressure quickly. It depends on what Jeff adds to the board. Nothing, just says go.
Now, Jeff does have that Apocryphite coming in next turn, and he can always dredge that Stinkweed Imp if he needs to. For example, if Dusty tries to get Imperiosaur rolling with a Moldervine Cloak, he could dredge the Imp. But Dusty drew Torn of Stone this turn, which could potentially put an end to any Stinkweed Imp lands.
And remember, the Imperiosaur wearing the Moldervine Cloak is lethal damage. Like, it must be blocked.
Right.
It looks like Imperiosaur resolved, so I don't think Jeff has a Logic Knot here either. And there's a Mog War Marshal. He's going to get a couple dudes there. He's got 3 mana up. And he's deciding if he wants to run that Moldervine Cloak out there now or if he should wait.
There are advantages and disadvantages both ways. If you play it now, then you spent the mana this turn. It's a little less likely to get countered. And if it does get countered, you could dredge it back next turn. But the hidden information could be worth a ton here to Dusty Ochoa.
That's right. I don't know how many cards Dusty has in his hand. I think 3.
Yeah, I think he's got the Moldervine Cloak, a land,
Mountain,
and one other mystery card. Or maybe,
it's the Flow of Stone.
Oh, yes. What do you think you would do here? Would you cast the Cloak or no?
No, I wouldn't. I think it's pretty safe in my hand. I mean, some thing that I might be worried about is Jeff playing a Fairy on end step here and then playing a Thieving Sprite and trying to get it, but he can't if I have 3 cards in hand, so I think it's safe.
And even then, you could always dredge it back.
Yes.
Yeah, I like holding it too. The hidden information is worth a ton here to Dusty Ochoa.
Erratic Mutation, but he's going to target the Mog War Marshal.
Wow.
That doesn't really get him anywhere, does it?
Oh, and he hits Aether Snipe too. That would have taken down the Imperiosaur.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that Jeff has been pretty willing to be risky with those Erratic Mutations in the past 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, and now he's like super conservative with it, hitting a creature that essentially replaces itself and even doesn't ask Dusty to do it. It looks like the Apocryphite still has 1 more turn before it comes back here. So Jeff, unless he can come up with something to jump in front of that Imperiosaur, could easily be facing lethal. And it's Death Cloud.
What a play.
Death Cloud for 5. We're going to get Death Cloud up on the screen for you. It has a whole lot of text, and you're going to see some nasty stuff happen. Each player is going to have to sacrifice 3 creatures.
And that Apocryphite's coming out next turn.
Wow. Each player loses X life, discards X cards, sacrifices X creatures, then sacrifices X lands. That means that the Moldervine Cloak hits the bin. Again, he can get it back. Take possession is what Jeff is going to have to get rid of, but this is going to set back Dusty and Jeff incredibly. 5 lands are going to be sacrificed each, and Dusty's down to 9. Like you mentioned before, Apocryphite coming in as a 4/4 with haste, and Dusty's going to be top decking.
Right. This is
what a huge game-swinging play.
We've seen 2 X-Bills cast this game, Molten Disaster and Death Cloud. What a crazy situation, and a lot depends on Dusty's top of his deck.
Let's see what he finds here. That was not a land.
It was some action. Let's see what it is.
Sentinel Wood Readers, no kicker. That's not going to do much here, as that Apocryphite is a 4/4 right now with haste. Now he's also going to dredge Stinkweed Imp. He's going to guarantee that he draws a spell this turn. He's milling 5 cards.
And one that he can cast, too, with only 3 mana left after that Death Cloud.
Yeah, like if he draws any number of things from his deck that he can't even cast, he's just going to guarantee it.
Also,
wow.
Also, the Imp is the 5th point of power, meaning that Dusty will have to chump block the Apocryphite next turn.
I love that dredge there.
Oh.
Dusty's going to dredge, and that's going to allow the Sentinel Wood Readers to block Apocryphite, and in fact, eat it if he were to attack.
Well, actually, I would play it, and then I guess you. Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right, Marshall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 4/7, but the Stinkweed Imp. That's the most threatening thing on the battlefield now. This is super intense. Remember, the Sentinel Wood Readers is also lethal going the other direction. So if Dusty can find something to chump block that Apocryphite, and if Jeff decides that he's going to keep attacking with his Stinkweed Imp, then all of a sudden Dusty can turn the tables on this game really quickly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I realized when Dusty played the Cloak on that Wood Readers. That's lethal damage right there.
Yeah.
So if he can just find a way to push through Jeff's board, he could kill Jeff. This is anyone's ball game.
This is anyone's ball game. This is going to be incredible. I mean, let's say that Jeff draws nothing here and attacks with Stinkweed Imp. If Dusty draws, well, there's a few cards he can draw in his deck that I think he's already had, Torn of Stone and that kind of thing, that are already in his graveyard. But even then, even if he just draws any creature, he can attack with that, make the Apocryphite block, and put Jeff in just an awful position here.
Right, and Dusty still has a couple pretty strong cards to draw. He's got Glacial Ray, which could take out that Imp potentially, or even just go to the face if you can find a way to deal an extra point of damage. Find a Kadama's Reach to splice onto, perhaps.
Now, does Jeff attack here? That's the question. He didn't. He just said go. He just doesn't want to risk it because he has to chump with the Apocryphite, and he knows he can't race. He's going to get Dusty down to 4, and then he's going to have to hold back the Imp anyway.
Crazy. Dusty draws a land there. And I think I like just playing the land so you don't get Thieving Sprite, and yeah, that's exactly what he does.
And he just says go because he has no attacks here. All right, so we've got a good old-fashioned standoff.
He draws a Glacial Ray.
Was that a Glacial Ray?
It was a Glacial Ray. Okay, so now... Oh my goodness. So now if you're Dusty, just hold on to it and try and draw a Kadama's Reach or something to kill off Jeff. Yeah, I mean, I just like holding it.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. He did decide to hold it. And there's a Wrathy Trapper. Now he's got a target for it. Now he can wait till his draw step. He drew Moloko the Clouded Mirror.
Goodness gracious.
Now he's in a bit of an awkward spot. Or I guess he can just run Moloko out there right now. But does he have to chump with Moloko here?
I actually think, because if he uses Wrathy Trapper to tap the Moloko, attacks with his creatures, he has to put Moloko on the...
yeah.
Or no, because then Jeff would die on the swing back.
So, but Jeff can just swing with Apocryphite here,
and that would take
right?
Dusty down to 1 life.
It would take him down to 1, but Dusty Ochoa has Glacial Ray in his hand, so if he takes this damage, goes to 1...
Then that's lethal on his turn.
Then it's lethal on his turn, assuming that Jeff has no cards in hand and no plays to make here. Oh wow, this is really, 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 really close.
What a riveting game.
Wow.
Right? I think Dusty...
Does Jeff have any cards in hand, Rashad? He has 1 card in hand.
Oh my goodness.
He's holding it close to his chest as well.
Right. Now he only has 1 Erratic Mutation, which he used up. I'm looking at what else he could have here. He could have Hirobi's.
All right, Rashad says he's trying to look at the smaller camera. He says he looks like he has 2 cards in hand. All right, he does have 1 card left in his hand here. And he did attack, and Dusty did take it. That was a Fiery Fall for Dusty.
Yeah, Fiery Fall.
Now, but Dusty's also in a much better position. He's got an active Moloko now.
Right.
So he can make a bunch of chump blockers if he needs to. But look, here it is, Glacial Ray to take out your
I
Imp.
think that's it.
And he moves in.
Combat.
Both the creatures attack, and that's it.
Wow, what a match. Dusty Ochoa takes down Jeff.
We hear a bunch of applause from the feature match area as Dusty Ochoa advances to the semifinals in what was just an absolute nail-biter. That was some intense stuff.
That was some of the most exciting magic I've watched all weekend.
Yeah.
I've sat here and watched, 9, 10 matches now, and this one was simply incredible. Molten Disaster killing off my own Baloth, Death Cloud back, and Tyson's my own creature. This is crazy. What a crazy magic match.
Man, I got the shivers from that one. That was incredible.
Right, and now we're going to hop right into another game here. Lance Hartbarger versus Justin Wynn.
Life totals are not correct. We have one game apiece here for these players. So similar situation to our last one. We're talking about a game 3 to advance to the semifinals here. On the last game, we saw Lance start off with a whole bunch of thalids, and I could tell he had like 10 or 12 just from our small camera shot there. By the end of that game, and it looks like he overwhelmed Justin's board state.
In this game, Justin seems a little light on lands. Lance has developed all the way up to Ryusei mana, and Justin's just got 3 lands and 2 Amru Scouts.
All right, Otherworldly Journey is going to hit Ryusei there.
Yeah.
It's going to come back in with a +1/+1 counter at the end of the turn?
Correct.
Okay. So it's basically a mini fog there. He's just keeping that dragon off his back for a turn.
When you have to make plays like that, that is not a good sign.
That is very bad news. He also took 3 still.
He could be hoping to draw maybe a Bound in Silence, or if he even finds a land, he could tutor up a Bound in Silence to put it on that Ryusei, buy a little bit of time, but the extra 5/5 pressure from the Dirkwood Baloth is going to really put Justin Wynn in a crunch.
Yeah, Justin is missing black mana and land drops here. We see that Lance Hartbarger has a ton of lands on the board in 3 different colors and is applying a ton of pressure. Justin looks like he's got a full grip of 7 cards here. I think he used that Otherworldly Journey just to get a card out of his hand and give himself a little bit of time. Here's a Moldervine Cloak and 2 flyers attacking. Hey, all of them are thinking about attacking with that Baloth as well.
That's 12 in the air coming through this turn for Lance Hartbarger.
He says just this much.
A paltry 12 damage.
And that's it. Not enough lands for James Wynn, and he falls to Lance Hartbarger. They high-five each other. Excuse me, Justin Wynn, thank you. He falls to Lance Hartbarger, who will be advancing to the semifinals.
Wow. Woo. A lot of crazy matches here.